before, so it's nice to be on this side of the mic. Woohoo! I'm going to read one poem from my book, and then I'm going to read some new work. So this is called Mystery Girl. Mystery Girl. There are tremendous brown geese in every field, serious geese, the kind you'd see startled into flight in the opening shot of a film about loss. In my boy meets girl, boy uses girl, girl becomes monster stories, there's always a second girl, much more mysterious than the first. The mystery girl loves them both, or maybe she just loves the girl but settles for the boy because she is mysterious, and the moment when a boy becomes a man, learns to love something other than himself is also mysterious. So there's an affinity there. Mystery Girl lives in a planetarium, hoping that upper management will one day promote her to the position of constellation. She passes the time by telling stories to the elementary school children, who are only half listening. They are too busy terrorizing starfish and experimenting with gravity. This is the story of Medusa, Perseus, and Pegasus. It is also the story of how I learned to understand the things that I loved, the things that would burn me. Perseus goes to the cave of a woman named Medusa, who has terrible mood swings and really bad hair. Everyone around her is frozen with indecision. Should they ask her if she wants to talk about it? The medication Medusa says she's on, does she know it isn't working? Does she notice she's been sleeping later and later? They're only her roommates. It isn't their place to be her keeper. And who does she think she is? Sleeping Beauty? And what's with all that snake imagery anyway? When conversation turned, she was repelled by everything I cannot remember. How many summers and winters passed in severed harvest as she cried, a surge of earth dreams breaking in the secret of her belly. The veins in her wrists, like schools of slippery fish, I struggled to still her hands. My hands, damaged fishing nets, letting too much pass through them, leaving us exhausted, unfed by time, unnourished by conversation. Perseus arrives on the scene, fearful and properly heroic. Using his lips as a saber, he cuts off Medusa's head. He makes her pain go away. Now all she can feel is her body. The tantrums stop immediately. Medusa's roommates don't really trust Perseus. He's an overly charismatic pretty boy, but at least they can breathe again and move around the cave freely again. These are encouraging developments that he has brought about. It's the indecision that's keeping me. If I truly wanted to return to her, no missing physics equation and no logical paradox would stop me. Sometimes I imagine myself traveling back in time as a messenger. I would find the monster girl and tell her, the fear is going to swallow the edges of your voice. Speak louder. She'll be sleeping on the far side of the room, covered in silence and star oil, the night intensifying her need, the cotton ball sadness stuffed into her ears. You have to find the words to wake her. Then I would find the mystery girl and tell her. The thought of words circling above my head like UFOs, abducting me, probing me, and leaving no memory terrifies me. Worse than those strange camera shots where people's faces seizure that are so popular in movies these days. But I owe you the words. You need them to protect yourself from the sabers in kisses. Without those words, eventually we all end up walking around the cave as headless bodies, no lips to speak, no eyes to cry. This is a great 1950s psychological thriller, dealing with nature versus nurture and the criminal mind. Throughout the film, various characters discuss the development of criminal tendencies over hard liquor. Meanwhile, there is Pegasus, a woman with wings and a bit of a martyr complex. Pegasus and Medusa know each other intimately. Medusa encourages Pegasus to stop letting people treat her like a pack horse, but this is before Medusa loses her head. Pegasus meets Perseus after he and Medusa are already lovers. She helps him out of a few jams. He rides her for his convenience. I stole a bridesmaid's dress from a movie. Peach satin fraying at the edges, bow on the ass, whistling to be cut open with a pocket knife. And then the woman took a lantern, held it above her head, and set herself on fire because she realized her body had been sewn from the bodies of corpses. But I'm mixing up my plot lines, and I wore it, smoldering for you. Because it worked so well for defeating Medusa's pain, Perseus gets the idea that the best way of approaching any problem is to chop off its head. Pegasus tries to warn Perseus that some problems need to be discussed and analyzed before a solution can be found, which may not be beheading. But he doesn't believe her, so his problems rapidly multiply. Medusa cannot see what's happening because she doesn't have a head. Perseus, still riding Pegasus, presses his body hard against her, closing the distance between them. He tangles himself so deeply into her mane that Pegasus begins to believe that his problems are her problems. The tangle of headless problems that Perseus fails to overcome is called the Hydra. The Hydra manifests itself in different form for each hero. For Perseus, the Hydra is 14 Valium and a hunting knife taken to both wrists. The Hydra almost kills Perseus, but improbably he survives it. All I could think was tears. I've given them tears, I've gift-wrapped them. At the end of the movie, the bald woman who looked kind of like a cancer survivor, only sexier, coalesces into a blinding light, and a new life form is created. Everyone agrees that something very deep has just happened. A tired metaphor, my fingers can't stroke your belly like the wind can, my hands touch too lightly because they would want to consume you like ripe fruit and are ashamed of their own desire for violence. I picture her reading this. This poem is a funhouse mirror. The story's chronology is inverted and the characters are interchangeable. It would never be enough to wake her. But she could sleepwalk towards me, into my arms. I could cheapen the ending by telling her it was all a dream, as I took her hand to help her down the steps, leading away from my poem. So this next poem is called Naked Complexity. It was written for a local reading series, which I unfortunately missed the deadline for. And in it, I'm picking a fight with Pablo Neruda, specifically with his line, "Naked, you are simple as a hand." Naked, you are complex as a wrist, with all its aching necessary tendons. You have hard calluses on your elbows, bruises on your legs, scars you need me to see, scars you need me to pretend not to see. The dark black hairs covering the space between your strong, stubborn breasts return every time you slice them away. Naked, you are enormous. Your there-ness pushes against me, like the increasing gradient of a mountain path. My calves and thighs ache to ascend your heights. I gulp down mouthfuls of air to fuel my body's determined efforts to never shrink from your muchness. Naked, there is no simplicity in you. I unwrap the fabric holding you in, stare at the beauty of a labyrinth with numberless paths and no exit. This one's called Beware of Poems About Wolves. For weeks my poems have been biting at air, wishing it were rabbit flesh, hungry wolves in a scarce hunting season. I must put leashes around the necks of my poems, drag them deep into the forest. I cannot stay in the valley, armed as I am with so many teeth. Everyone I meet is writing songs about horses. I can't write about horses, only wolves. Horses, please pass the word along to all cows, goats, and sheep. Keep to the open country. Do not leave the pastures. Ignore all invitations I might send in a fit of nostalgia. Should you encounter the wolves in my poems, don't count on me. I will be too mesmerized by the contrast of red blood and white muzzle. Keep away from my papers and pens. You will end up in the belly of a poem about wolves. I'm going to read one more. This one is called In a Crisis. and it uses some found language from a short story by Ben Marcus. Remember to stay clam. Affect a tough exterior of unyielding calcium. Open only when the tide is high. In the age of wire and steel, make the seagulls fish for you. Make them pry you out of the sand. There is no larger task than that of cataloging a culture. Eventually, they will lift you, like a product that must be ravaged of bias. Hovering in a cage of claws above the waves, imagine for a moment that you could be more than a stone. You would feel the wind rushing against your face as they held you aloft before releasing you to break open against the rocks above the shoreline. By looking at an object, we destroy it with our desire. The seagulls are fond of musing. Thanks. So, the next writer who's going to be reading for you today, his name is Channing Allen. He's a novelist, and his work is called Wells Without Waters.
Cage of chairs.